All right, folks, I am just so very pleased to welcome fellow Rotarian, our Police Chief, Ken Savano. And I am particularly impressed by the depth and diversity of his experience. Ken has risen through the ranks to chief based on the respect of his fellow officers. And that is an important tribute to him. He's responsible for a number of important innovations in the police department. For example, Coffee with a Cop and an app, which he's going to show you. So everybody pull out your cell phone because he's going to show you about this app. And I particularly know what a great guy is because I was in leadership Petaluma with him. So I give you our police chief, Ken Savano.
What I wanted to do very quickly is I have some prizes to give out. One of the things we're going to talk about is relationship and the importance of that when it comes to policing a community. For those of you that serve on boards or see me on a weekly or monthly basis, I might have to exclude you from this quiz, but if you can name my dog, raise your hand. Okay, I have some work to do. All right, good. How about my wife? First name? Nice work, Mr. Tamby. Nice work. Thank you for that. So there's a prize for you. Appreciate it. So I think one of the themes that we're going to talk about in a moment is relationship and how important that is. And I think that it's important that you know a little bit about your police chief. So I don't have any children. Congratulations. It's awesome news. But we do have Ruby. She's about 18 months now, a little Vishla. And my wife, Kathleen, is a hairdresser downtown at, it's now Crown, I think. And life is good. We enjoy the outdoors and camping and fly fishing and having fun with friends and making wine and eating good food and being amongst the people like yourselves. So we feel pretty blessed to be doing that. So I grew up on Caulfield Lane. Some of you I know have seen me. I think it's been a year or so since I've been to this club, so I'm trying to catch up some of you. I started my career here in Petaluma in 1994, and I've been very fortunate to have a lot of opportunity to work hard and serve you. And on behalf of the men and women of the Petaluma Police Department, who I hope, if you don't have a relationship with anyone on my staff or with me, that we begin to create that and keep this community safe. So one of the things I want to talk about is the importance of history. Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We've all heard that, right? Who made that quote?
Einstein.
No? Winston. Who said Winston?
You are so smart. I'm sitting at the smart table.
Okay, somebody else said Winston Churchill. Nice work. Nice work. So in policing, I want to talk about why this is important. So how far back do you think the history of studying policing goes? Anybody? Well, yeah, I mean, we can go probably back to the Romans, but different time. So I'm going to tell you 1829. It's kind of considered the creation of kind of modern policing as we know it today. And what's awesome about this is it's the Robert Peel of the London Metropolitan Police Department. Remember, they don't carry guns. I mean, they have special forces now that do, but back then, the Bobbies, they relied on this policing concept, which is very much true today. Maintaining a relationship with the public that gives reality to the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public are the police. We're just paid to give full-time attention to that which is the responsibility of all of us, right? Pretty simple. So when we transition from the 1800s back to the United States, who knows why the Wickersham Commission was commissioned? What was going on? Why did this commission come about? Prohibition. What else happened during Prohibition? How about a lot of police corruption? Right? So the Wickersham Commission comes out, and does anyone know what one of the results of that commission was that's related to law enforcement?
Get rid of prohibition.
I think that had already happened, but that would have been a great result. very close to citizen advisory boards. Anybody? So Congress recommended that the Department of Justice create a national police academy to elevate the standards and professionalism and training of law enforcement across the country. What year did that happen? How'd you know? Yeah, 1935, exactly right. So in 1935, I'll throw a bonus round. Who was the director of the FBI in 1935? J. Edgar Hoover. Nice work. So J. Edgar Hoover started the FBI National Academy in 1935. Yeah. They've been conducting that National Academy since then. And why, how is that relevant to Petaluma, you're probably wondering. Well, I have, but more importantly, I'm fortunate for those that have served before me, that have policed this community and created an organization that I've become a part of and carry on some of what we've learned since 1949. So this is a graduation photo of Captain Delbert Cole, who would go on to become the assistant chief under Nuny Del Maestro. And what you'll notice is I have Cole's photograph circled, and just to the lower left is J. Edgar Hoover. He stood in every graduation photograph every year that he served as a director. So every session, it has a number. And so in 1949, Petaluma sent their first person to the National Academy. A year later, Nuny Del Maestro would attend in 1950. He's actually session 45. But he's pictured there with the red circle. And again, J. Edgar Hoover is in that photo. And then in 1972, Larry Higgins, who rose up in the ranks under Del Maestro, went to the National Academy as well. And since then, several of our leaders have gone, including myself, last spring. I think that's why maybe I didn't see you last year. I'm hoping it's not because you didn't want to invite me back. Thank you, Suzanne. This is a photograph of the National Academy in Quantico. It's on the Marine Corps base. And so I was housed here for 10 weeks and took about 17 college units from University of Virginia. It was intensive academic and physical training for 10 weeks. And everything is self-contained there on the complex. You probably can't tell, but you connect all the buildings by glass hallways. We called it the Habitrail. But when it was snowing outside, it was nice to be protected. This is a photograph of outside my dorm. So we lived in an actual college dorm, and I shared a room with Dean Bailey from Beckley Police Department in West Virginia. He said when I walked in the door, he says, "Hi, I'm Dean. Don't laugh. I'm from West Virginia." And I said, "Well, I'm Ken Savano from California. Don't laugh at me. We have some crazy stuff going on the West Coast." So we spent 10 weeks together, and it was a really great experience. And then I just wanted to share with you the leaders that have led our department, our organization since then. Some of your members, Danny Fish, I know you've had most of these folks up here at one time or another since Larry Higgins. Thomas Sims, our police chief, Patrick Parks, Patrick Williams, Steve Hood, Danny Fish, and then myself last January. So the reason that's important is that because in 1949, this department, this community, had leaders in its law enforcement agency that realized how important it was to deliver best practices and quality policing services. And so we focus back in on history. The Warren Commission in 1963, what did that address?
Kennedy assassination.
Right, Miranda, right? Miranda came about. Now we have to tell suspects what their rights are, and forced coercion and the big white light and the old movies that you used to see, right? And then the Violent Crime Control Act in 1994, followed shortly thereafter by Rodney King, right? And in 1994, that government-sanctioned report addressed and put a lot of funding towards community policing. And the reason they did that was because community policing works. We know that, right? And so I would argue that in my 24 years of being here, and I think I told you before, my first assignment was foot patrol downtown and then bicycle patrol downtown. And that's how I started to meet a lot of you in this room, just by walking around and shaking your hand and getting to know who we serve. And I remember when I got back from bicycle school, they said, "Go talk to Dick Sharkey. He's going to pay for your trading card." And I'm like, "I'm not a sports person. I'm a police officer. Why do I have a trading card?" But in 1994, because of all of this focus on best practices and relationship building with the community and how to police this community the right way, I came in at a time that all the right things were already happening. And it's a pleasure and a privilege to continue this focus on delivering the best possible services to you, our community. So the latest government-sanctioned report is the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. And it focuses on these 6 pillars: public trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology, social media, community policing and crime reduction, training and education, and officer safety and wellness. I'm going to tell you why number 6 is such a big deal. So about 15 years ago, the first kind of scientific sanctioned report was done on the welfare of public safety officers, police and fire. And 15 years ago, the average life expectancy of a police officer was 57. So several things started to happen. They realized very quickly officers were retiring and then not lasting very long. And so we began a lot more awareness and wellness training and, the trauma and the stress of the things that we go to. The fact that we're wearing 30 pounds of gear every day, getting in and out of a car, chasing suspects, whatever, right? Heart disease, suicide. We had a law enforcement suicide right here in our community, not one of our officers, but a law enforcement officer that lives in our community just 2 days ago. It's a real problem. We also want to pay attention to the violence that occurs with law enforcement. So we've had 21 line of duty deaths so far in 2019. Last year at this time, when I got out of the National Academy, there had already been 35 deaths. So we're down a little bit. We had 150 last year, and then there are the numbers for the last 5, last 10, and total. Does anyone know how many law enforcement officers have been killed wearing this uniform, Petaluma police patches? Yes, sir.
1.
Not correct.
0.
I wish.
2.
I wish 0.
11.
Nope. Who said 4? Who said 4? Somebody say 4? Did I miss it? Sorry, 4. You already got one of these, young man. So yes, we've had 4 officers killed in the line of duty. The first 2, sadly, were accidents. In 1887, the city marshal, Julius Bloom, stepping off of a train, got injured, and it was a fatal injury. Being mindful of the little young souls in the room. And then Officer Burt Johnson in 1925, an accident searching the building, was accidentally injured and fatally by his own firearm that hit the ground. And then Constable Rasmussen in 1927. That was a shootout with a gentleman who had mental health issues. He'd already shot someone and then engaged law enforcement in a shootout for many hours and actually killed the constable who was trying to hold the perimeter position. And then Officer Villahola, who was shot in 1969 at a domestic violence incident and would become instantly a paraplegic, would survive until 1998 when he passed away. Recently dedicated the interchange at Old Red and 101, which is close to where the Holas live. These are his boys, Kurt and Dana, and so we try to pay tribute to those. And then your own deputy chief, if you haven't met her, is Tara Salazzoni. Her father was a sergeant at Lake County Sheriff's Office, and he was gunned down in 1981. So we pay attention to that, and it helps us focus. Just a quick moment of silence. Have to do this. It's important. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you. So our mission, I'd just like to, messaging is important. I think it's important that you understand how myself, your public servants, deliver service and who we are and why we're this way. Our mission, obviously, working with the community to provide professional police services. We are proud of our history of 161 years in April. My vision, our vision, very similar to Robert Peel and the importance of relationship. Imagine a day if all of you knew me and all of my staff, and we knew all of you as well as you know your kids, your neighbors, your best friend, right? The earlier comment about walking in our shoes, you wouldn't start from a place of doubt. You'd start from a place of trust and good thought and that's a healthy relationship when you know those things. And when you don't, it leads to questions. And we have to have dialogue like we're having now to understand it. So those we serve know those who serve them. It's kind of our dream that we probably will never achieve, but we'll try very hard. Leadership's very important to us. Our relationship with the community starts with the relationships with our staff. We have to pay attention to things like the average life expectancy of a public servant. It's now 65. The report just came out last fall. It's gone up to 65. You take a male non-police officer, you have a 1% chance of dying between the ages of 60 and 65. You add police officer to their career, and it goes up to 55%. And so these are just, and it includes everything, right? Not just violence against law enforcement, it's everything. And so we have to really focus on taking care of our staff. Our performance principles, this is a mural on the back of our building that reminds our staff of how important these principles are in everyday service to the community. And then, so out of the President's Task Force, and just shortly before that, and obviously all that stuff came out after Ferguson and Andy Lopez locally, and all of the challenges that we're dealing with in police-community relations, they turned these four things, procedural justice and police legitimacy, to help law enforcement understand the importance of relationship. I'll give you that if any one of these are missing, it's not a healthy relationship. So whether that's me as your police chief and you as a community member, or husband and wife, brother and sister, supervisor, subordinate, everyone expects this when it comes to relationship. And when it doesn't happen, it's not healthy. So we focus on those things as we deliver service. We have two service models, patrol and neighborhood district policing. Patrol is the everyday call comes in, gets categorized, prioritized. We have 4 beats. The freeway and Washington Street divide the city into 4 geographical quadrants. At any given time, we have a minimum of 4, hopefully, and hopefully more than that. And they're dispatched to those calls based on availability. Our response times continue to increase, unfortunately, instead of decreasing, which we'll talk about in a minute. And our neighborhood district policing, we take that same city, divided into 15 smaller neighborhoods, and assign 2 officers long-term to be kind of your neighborhood officer to know the issues in your neighborhood. If you don't know who that staff is, on our website, if you do Petaluma Police Map as a Google search, or go to the city's website under police, you can access this map with the districts. You click on your district where you live or work, and it will pop up. Everyone is assigned to your area from the district officer all the way to me. Email, phone number, please reach us. We deliver services with a budget of about $18.6 million. We are the largest piece of the pie for the city's budget, 24/7. We have 93.10 full-time employees. The red numbers on the right are the numbers of staff that we had prior to the recession. We still have not gained them back. We have 65 sworn peace officers that are on the general fund, and a total of 68, 3 of which are grant funded, 2 school resource officers and an officer assigned to community crimes task force, or computer crimes task force, sorry. This is just an example. We've been tracking our staffing levels since 1986, and this slide will relate to the next one in my kind of explanation about some service cuts that we did. The orange line is the national average of officers per 1,000 across the country. And in this particular graphic, we use only the agencies with a population of 50,000 to 99,000. The green is the city of Petaluma population. The purple is the California average number of police officers per 1,000 residents. And then the blue, sadly, is us. And you don't need me to explain the problem with that line. In 2008, the general plan called for 1.3 officers per 1,000, and clearly we are well below that now at about 1.01. If we had that ratio, which would be close to the standard, it would still be low, we'd have a total of 79 sworn officers, and we're currently running 65. So just some understanding there in terms of our challenges. This is only an issue right now, but it's a real issue. So on the left-hand side are our funded positions in the budget. We should have a total of 36 officers assigned to patrol. We need 30 as a minimum without creating overtime. We're currently at 28. And then there's a total number of 18, which follows the bottom, the next few rows of officers in training. So those 5 at the top are currently in field training on the street assigned to the police officer learning the job. Then we had 4 in the academy, 1 just got hurt. So we're down to 3. And we have 4 slated to go to the April academy next. We have no current vacancies, so we don't have any unfilled positions. But we have a total between them and the injured officers, which right now is at 7. We have a total of 18 empty seats. So we're down about 27, 28% of our sworn force trying to deliver the same level of service. Out of 5 motors, Rick, it sounds like you're good at handing out tickets and getting people to buy them. So if you want to be a traffic sergeant and the rest of that team, Chris, I'll put you on motorcycles. I'm not so sure. I don't care about the revenue. The traffic safety right now is suffering. We're down to 1 motor officer. We have no DUI enforcement. They got pulled because of patrol staffing. Detectives are down 1. We pulled 2 detectives from task forces. We're down to 1 school resource officer because 1 is injured. We had 2 officers dedicated to homelessness. They're pulled back to patrol. Our sergeants, we have 6 patrol teams. We've got to supervise them. They're holding strong right now. We have a sergeant over traffic and investigations. They're there. And then an admin sergeant, my command staff lieutenant, the deputy chief, and myself to make up the 68. So why is this important? Well, we forecasted, when I got back to the National Academy, our challenge was attrition. We have a very senior department, people like me that have been around a long time, and they're getting close to that lovely retirement age. And so we are forecasting as many as 15 plus retirements in the next 18 to 36 months. In addition to that, until recently, the City Council just ratified a new contract for the police officers. We were 20% behind Santa Rosa in terms of comparable pay. We have lost 4 to Santa Rosa. We're about to lose a 5th. We lost 1 to the sheriff's office. We have to be competitive in this marketplace. The officers that left want to buy a home. They can't afford to live here. And the difference in pay between us and Santa Rosa is enough to make up the difference for that. And so that is tough for us when we recruit great people, train them, but we can't retain them. It's a huge challenge for us. So we had a huge vacancy in patrol. We had to collapse 7 specialty positions. So we pulled from traffic, we pulled from homelessness, we pulled from all over the organization to keep officers on patrol to handle the calls for service. Why do I tell you that? Well, last August we announced some service retirements, or service reductions. We no longer respond to property damage, only collisions, and I'm sorry, we just don't have the staff to do it. Certain property crimes with no suspect information that are low level, we have an online reporting system. And there are several other things that we had to cut, but I don't want to go into the details here. It's all available online. But we are service-oriented, and it pains me greatly to look out at you and tell you that we've had to reduce services that we know this community deserves and that we know historically has kept this city beautiful and safe and nice. And so I tell you all this to not feel bad that I chose a profession of law enforcement to wear all this gear and I might die at a young age. I tell you that because the quality of life that we enjoy here in Petaluma is not by accident. And I need you to know that. And the staffing levels that we've been running at, several of those injuries are mental health. Tragic events, situations where they almost had to use deadly force, and our people are just breaking. And we're not alone. There are many departments in the city that are struggling, and we as a community have to ask ourselves, what do we want our roads to look like? What do we want our parks to look like? What kind of safety do we want? And so I just ask you to embrace that, because it's really this is really all a byproduct of a revenue situation for the city. So our daily mission to reduce crime, improve traffic safety, and engage the public. I'll give you a quick snapshot of crime. The general summary is the state's enjoying, the country's enjoying kind of a downward trend. Economy goes up, crime goes down. The economy's been better, and so crime, at least for people crimes, which is the top section, has held kind of steady. Property crimes are skewed a little bit because we don't necessarily respond to all of them the same way. So we look at individual categories. We have seen an 80% increase in robbery, which has been difficult to deal with. in the last few years. So, but it's holding steady there. We see at the end there a 3-year average and a 5-year average. You know, you're going to see what's really impacting us and impacting the community. These are the top 5 case numbers issued in the community. So mental health and traffic fluctuate every year. So mental health is a huge problem, and we deal with it every day. Warrant arrest, probation violations, and narcotics. 1, 3, 4, and 5, I can tell you right now, are directly connected to the homeless population that we deal with. They're almost 25% of our daily calls for service. When we had 2 officers dedicated to them, we impacted that greatly. They have been pulled back to patrol, so if you have noticed that problem coming back, it's unraveling very quickly. This is traffic, and we had about a 60% increase in fatal and injury crashes going into 17, and we've been able to downward trend that a bit. Not as many fatalities and not as many injuries, but still much higher than it has been historically, and so we're trying to stay focused on that. Tough with 1 motor and 1 sergeant. The causes of crashes, which I typically bring to you, and people want to know what's causing crashes, what can I watch out for, and what intersections should I watch out for. There's that. Unsafe speed, improper turning right away. Sadly, DUI used to be down like 6 or 7. It's creeping back up. When we can't do the enforcement, it starts to become a problem again. And then Lakeville, Washington, we all know the busy intersections where you really need to mind your P's and Q's and avoid a lot of those violations at those spots. The don't drink and drive message is pretty obvious, but the others you can kind of keep an eye on. So our staffing levels and keeping the community safe, I think this is important for you to understand. In a perfect model with enough staff and enough resources, 1/3 of an officer's time should be reactive, 1/3 should be proactive, checking people out, patrolling neighborhoods, doing traffic enforcement, and 1/3 of their time should be administrative. They got to write their reports, they got to go to training, all that stuff. So what we do with this graph by hour of day and day of week is we look at the average percentage of available time of our staff. Dark green are the only ones that are actually hitting 30%. And sadly, those are like early in the morning. But the rest of the day, from 7 a.m. till almost 10 p.m., and even almost midnight, we are way off. So our officers are much more reactive than they are proactive, which then tends to allow the things to happen in your neighborhoods that you don't want to have happen. So this is why this all matters to us. Community engagement, I think you all know that we've been pretty active in engaging you. Your invitation for me to come speak to you is part of that. But we also do community police academies where we invite you in to get a deeper dive into our organization. We do English and Spanish community classes out in, we actually go to the communities that don't necessarily want to go to the police station. And then coffee with a cop, the long-term district policing assignments, technology and social media, town hall meetings, all of those things. If you're not connected to us, this is my plea. I'm not going to dive into our app because of time, but these are the platforms that the community is connecting with us. If you are on any one of these, or you know someone that is, please ask them to go to our page, follow us, like us, whatever. This is our way of getting information to you so you're aware of what's happening in your community so you can help us keep it safe. So please do that. When I was back in Washington and in Quantico, I visited the National Law Enforcement Memorial, and this is what's carved on the walls, and I'll leave you with this, and if there's time for questions, feel free and I'll stick around. Carved on these walls is the story of America, of a continuing quest to preserve both democracy and decency, and to protect the national treasure that we call the American dream. And whether you think about the thought of the day or the thought that I leave you with, it's very current for the things that are going on in our country right now. We appreciate your support, especially for my staff who are doing an amazing job with very few resources. And I appreciate you being open to some of those solutions that might come towards you in the future to keep Petaluma the place that we know and love. Thank you for your time.
Police Chief Ken Savano, thank you so much, and fellow Rotarian, I might add, who does a lot of good things for the community. Let's all stand up and give him a big applause. Thank you so much, and for your service presentation. You were wonderful. With that, thank you all for coming. Remember, next week we start 15 minutes early, so we will see you then, and have a great week. Thanks again.